throwaway because my family doomscrolls Reddit like it's a second job. On mobile, sorry for any formatting. I'm a 33F. My brother, Evan, 31M, just got married last weekend. I was asked to be a bridesmaid. That sentence looks simple typed out, but it felt like someone hand-delivered me a live grenade wrapped in satin. Context matters. My relationship with my parents is, charitable word would be difficult. Real word is corrosive. I was the kid who brought home book fair prizes and perfect attendance certificates and got told to make room for Evan's trophies. I studied late, worked part-time, paid for my own senior trip, and heard my mother say at the dinner table, "Imagine what you could accomplish if you were more like your brother. He has that spark." I'd ask what spark, but my father would clear his throat and say, "Don't antagonize." There was always a line I wasn't supposed to cross and an invisible test I had already failed. I moved out at 19 with 2 suitcases, a knife roll, and a stack of recipes copied from library books. The only thing I ever felt truly competent at was feeding people. I interned in a grimy kitchen that paid me in family meal and cigarette breaks. I don't smoke. Got yelled at in 2 languages, and learned the choreography of a dinner rush. Eventually, I noticed the people in crisp shirts who showed up with vans and black crates and rolled past the chaos, smiling. Caterers. They were the ones who left before the screaming started. 12 years later, after dish pits and pop-ups and doing taxes at a laundromat because it had the only table big enough, I own a catering company. It's small but legit, a core staff of 8, 50 on-call servers, rented kitchen, custom inventory labels, a spreadsheet that could double as a modern art installation. We operate under a brand name that's not my legal last name. My middle name became my public last name after a nasty early client tried to stalk me. And I don't put my face on our social media. Chefs are replaceable in marketing. Consistency is the real star. My parents do not know any of this. They know I cook. They think I'm a knife for hire who does parties. My mother once introduced me to a family friend as our little cater waitress. And when I corrected her, she blinked and said, "Well, you bring the trays, don't you?" It was easier to shrug than to summarize payroll regulations and a 15-page HACCP plan. So when Evan got engaged to Lena, who is objectively lovely, I wasn't surprised to get a call where my mother said, in the tone you reserve for returning a sweater, "We assume you'll be a bridesmaid." It would look odd otherwise. Not, "We'd love to have you." Not, "It would mean a lot." It would look odd. Like seating charts and centerpieces, I was a guest flow problem. I said yes because I love my brother. He's gentle in the way people don't credit to oldest sons in our family. He let me practice knife skills on his old baseballs and pretended not to notice when I accidentally took his car the night I left for good. He texts me pictures of badly lit lunches and says, "Would chef approve?" with 3 dumb emojis. He has spent his whole life trying to be the sponge that soaks up our parents' acid so the rest of us don't corrode. The venue they chose is the kind of place that exists to photograph well, whitewashed beams, a pond that looks like a screensaver, enough fairy lights to power a small nation. A planner handled most vendor outreach. I didn't see the full list until Lena forwarded me the schedule with a "Can you help me understand the timing?" note. Under catering, I saw my company's brand. My brain did the record scratch thing. I stared at it so long my cat started drumming her paw on my thigh. The planner had found us through Instagram. We were shortlisted for polished, seasonal, unfussy, which is exactly our lane. The contract was signed, deposit paid, final counts pending. The contact name on the invoice was Lena's mom, not my parents. No one had connected me to us. Here is a thing about catering that people don't understand. The best caterers are like stage managers with spatulas. We design redundancies for everything. If you ask me how many sheet pans are in the truck, I will ask, for mains or backups? We can feed 300 people in a thunderstorm with only one working outlet and a prayer you forgot to say. We have contingency plans for contingency plans. We know how to disappear. We also know how to leave. I did not tell my family. I told my second in command, Daria, who laughed so hard she had to sit down. I told her we were maintaining professional boundaries. We were executing the contract. We would do our job. Daria nodded and said, "Obviously. Do you want me to route all day of questions through me so you can be in bridesmaid drag?" I said yes, and she said, "Copy. Also, please do not allow your mother within 30 feet of the plating tables." We agreed on a hand signal. 2 fingers brushing the brim of my glass. to mean abort the handoff to front of house and switch to holding pattern if something went sideways on timing. That was the plan. Then came the rehearsal dinner. I wore the required dusty sage dress that made me look like an apologetic eucalyptus. The restaurant had a private room, long table, 2 bright chandeliers. My mother arrived in white, not cream, white, and insisted it was ecru and therefore not tacky. My father told a story about Evan's childhood soccer triumph that was actually about how he, my father, had coached the team to greatness, and at the end he clapped himself on the back. Lena's family is Ukrainian. They're warm and direct, and came with toasts that were both heartfelt and efficient. It was almost nice. Then my mother stood up with a little spoon and dinged her glass. "I'd like to say a few words," she said, which is a sentence that makes my skin do that tight-lipped smile it's learned. She started sweet. She talked about family. She talked about how proud she was of Evan and how he's always been destined for something big. She gestured vaguely at me and said, "And of course, our daughter will be right up there with him. Someday, when she's ready to settle down and give up the catering thing." She did a little ha-ha, so people would know it was a joke. The room did the polite ripple you give a joke you don't understand. I felt the old fizz in my throat that means anger is carbonating. I took a sip of water. My father chimed in, because he's never liked to be off mic. "We always said the kitchen is a great hobby," he said. "And hobbies can be very therapeutic. But a real career takes commitment. Long-term thinking." He looked at me and added, "You'll figure that out in time." Lena's brother coughed into his napkin in a way that sounded like, wow. Evan stared at his plate. My hands went so steady it scared me. That's always been the tell. When I get very, very calm, something in me is considering an option the rest of me hasn't caught up to. I have spent years practicing not reacting to my parents. Therapy gave me language like radical acceptance and gray rock. Kitchens taught me timing, when to salt, when to wait, when to turn off the heat, so carryover cooking finishes the job. The trick, both in food and family, is restraint. My mother wasn't done. She launched into a story about how, at Christmas, I had sent the most adorable little quiches, and how everyone loved them, and how if only that sort of creativity could be channeled into something that builds equity. She smiled brightly at Lena's parents, like we were discussing seasonal wreaths. I heard a chair scrape. It was Daria, in my peripheral memory, at a charity gala last spring, leaning back after a donor joked that we must be thrilled to have such simple work compared to restaurants, and I'd said, "Our work is logistics," and she'd said, "Our work is dignity." The words landed in my mouth like something I had been saving for winter. "Mom," I said, "enough." It wasn't loud. But in my family, contradicting my mother in public is like turning off the lights in a supermarket and shouting fire. Forks paused midair. Evan's eyes flicked up, pleading. My mother tilted her head. "I'm just teasing," she said, the way people say, "I'm just honest," when they want permission to be cruel. "Don't be so sensitive." "Okay," I said. "Then let's be honest. I am not a hobbyist. I own the company that's feeding your 300 guests on Saturday." Silence. A pristine, expensive silence. My father actually laughed once, sharp, like I'd told a riddle. My mother blinked in the slow-motion way of a cat, deciding whether to knock something off a shelf. Evan whispered my name like a prayer you pray under your breath in an exam you didn't study for. Lena's mom recovered first. "Oh," she said, genuinely delighted. "That explains why the tasting was so, what's the word, precise. We loved the citrus herb chicken. My compliments." My mother smiled at her, that diplomat smile. "Isn't that cute?" she said. She always did enjoy playing hostess. She had heard me. She had decided not to. I could feel the room split into people who had decided this was a family bit, and people who had realized the floor was a very thin crust over something molten. Evan squeezed my knee under the table. "Please," he mouthed. I nodded. I swallowed it. I made a joke about hoping the bar staff didn't get sick because I didn't want to be shaking martinis in a floor-length dress. The table laughed. The chandeliers hummed. Afterwards, I helped Lena's grandma with her coat and told her where to get the good honey at the farmer's market. The night ended, as nights do, like nothing had happened. But something had. Not out loud. In me. The morning of the wedding, I put on the eucalyptus dress again. I pinned my hair. I texted Daria, "Remember, I'm in costume. You're in command." She texted back a bicep emoji and "Go be ornamental." Our trucks were already at the venue, our ovens preheated, our servers briefed. We had a timeline that could have landed a plane. I checked the checklist in my head like a rosary. Canapes? Yes. Chafers? Labeled. Gluten-free? Cross-checked. Backup ice? In the freezer trailer. Espresso cart? Plugged into separate breaker. Exit route? Always. At the venue, people cooed over the florals and took pictures of the pond. I hugged Evan and told him he looked like a cake topper in a good way. He whispered, "Thank you for yesterday," and I said a true thing. That's all. Then my mother found me where bridesmaids go to be put in a line and said, brightly, as if discussing weather, I spoke with the planner. We're going to cut the cocktail hour short and move straight to toasts so there's more dancing. The caterers will adapt. That's their job. It was a small thing, on paper, but it yanked a thread that held hours of work. Toasts before cocktail hour would mean no tray pass starters, which would mean guests hitting the open bar on empty stomachs, which would mean chaos at the carving station later, which would mean my staff fielding complaints that the late-night sliders weren't hot enough. It would mean throwing away food I had paid for, prepared, and timed like a heartbeat. I smiled in a way that put no teeth in the light. We've planned for the schedule you approved, I said. If you want to change, you should talk to the planner, who will talk to my manager, and we'll make adjustments if they're feasible. My mother's face did a micro-expression I know too well. The calculation between can I push you and will this make me look unreasonable? She leaned in. Don't be difficult, she murmured. Try to be, what's the word, supportive. For once. I thought about what support had looked like all my life. It had looked like me being a human shock absorber for their preferences. It had looked like me making sure everyone else ate first. It had looked like the kind of love that wears a uniform that says staff. The ceremony happened. It was beautiful, and I cried, and I meant it. Evan's vows were earnest and messy in the best way. Lena's grandfather did a reading that made half the room dab their eyes with napkins that definitely weren't designed for that. Then came the reception. Then came the microphones. My father took one. My mother took another. The fairy lights glowed. 300 people lifted glasses. I could see, across the room like a mirrored stage, my staff assembling trays, my captain checking the runner's path, the barbacks lining up garnishes like soldiers. I could see, as if through glass, the entire night unfurling the way we had built it. My mother smiled the way she smiles when she is about to land a punch and call it a pat. Family, she began, is where we learn who we are. She turned her head toward me, subtle as the moon's tide. Some of us learn faster than others. Daria caught my eye from 40 feet away and tapped her temple. You good? I lifted my glass. 2 fingers brushed the rim, a movement small enough to be mistaken for a stray thought. The room went on breathing. The band shuffled their set lists. Somewhere outside, a frog croaked. In my body, a second hand ticked to the top of the hour and stopped. My mother had the mic in the posture of a talk show host. Family is where we learn who we are, she said, and then she looked at me. My father added the usual. Evan had that spark. I always loved playing in the kitchen. Some people aren't ambitious. There's value in supporting roles. Laughter did that polite ripple, the kind you do when the social contract requires noise. Behind the glass of all that, my work brain kept humming. I could see my staff, 2 runners at the service door, FOH captain near the bar, Daria at the pass counting souffle cups with her eyes. The band tested a chord. The planner hovered with the tight smile of a person who lives in spreadsheets. In other words, a perfect stage. I didn't plan what happened, not exactly. People think revenge is a prepared speech. For me, it was a reflex, like feeling a sauce break in your wrist before it separates in the pan. I lifted my flute and brushed the rim with 2 fingers, our normal signal to hold trays at the door. Then I added a second gesture. A flat palm snapped shut, quick as a book closing. Daria saw. She dipped her chin once. Copy, she mouthed. Then to FOH, like she'd been waiting her whole life to be this calm. Pivot to contingency K, quietly. Contingency K, secure, kill heat, pack, roll, clean exit. My parents kept talking. The greatest hits came out. Thank you notes I forgot at 12. How Evan took care of things when I ran off to be a waitress. Lena's face went the color of uncooked pastry. Evan stared at his plate like it was a compass. The planner sensed a tremor without knowing its epicenter. Across the room, my crew moved like mercury. Barback sealed fruit and closed speed rails. Runners reversed routes. Hotline cut flames and opened lids to cool pans. Pastry snapped lids on trifle jars. On the gravel outside, the trucks idled like horses who've heard the whistle. Yes, the guests weren't at fault. But when my mother toasted Evan, skipped my name, and made my work a joke, I chose a boundary. I took the mic for exactly one sentence. Since we're being honest, I said, still smiling, I own the catering company you hired. We run on respect. Tonight we're short. Gasps a few O's. I handed the mic back to my mother like it was heating my palm. A roller door sighed. It's a soft sound most people miss. In my body, it's an alarm. Guests turned in slow motion. Some thought it was a surprise reveal. The band, professionals, swelled into a jaunty standard you play while rich people are confused. The planner appeared at my elbow without moving her feet. What are you doing? She said, voice perfectly level. Implementing a contingency, I said. We're out. You can't, she said. It wasn't rude, it was honest. I can't, I said. Contract allows cessation in unsafe environments. Unsafe. Unsafe for my people. Also, I won't stand in a room where my work is a punchline and ask others to do it for me. Give me 10 minutes, she said, eyes already scanning for fixes that didn't exist. Too late. FH was counting crates. The espresso cart bled its line. A server with freckles the color of paprika squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you." That almost broke me more than anything my parents said. The first ripple hit at the bar, shuddered. The second at the door, no trace. The third in the air, ovens cooling, butter smell fading. People feel absence with their noses before their brains catch up. Then the volume rose. Not the band, the questions. Where's food? Is this a bit? Who planned this? My mother did that tight-lipped march she reserves for returns without receipts. Fix it, she said through a smile. You're being childish. I'm protecting my staff, I said. And myself. You're ruining your brother's wedding. I looked at Evan. He looked at me like a man on a dock watching the only boat push off. What do you need me to do? He asked, hoarse. It was a door I could have opened into something gentler. I could have said, say my name. Tell them I'm not a joke. Ask for the apology I will never get. But the ledger had already turned, and I was so tired of being scaffolding for other people's epiphanies. Nothing, I said. Love your wife. I have a job to do. We finished the pullout in under 15 minutes, because we are professionals even when we're leaving. Wealth expects compliance. It lacks an imagination for exits. No one tried to stop us. Rooms know when the food has left, like taking the sound off a movie. You can watch mouths move, but the plot is broken. Lena found me, fingers trembling around her bouquet. Is this because of my parents? She asked. Did they say something? No, I said. This is about your new in-laws. I'll refund what I can. We'll eat the rest. She swallowed. Please don't. Her voice wasn't entitled. It was scared. I already did, I said. A murmur rolled through the tables like weather. Someone's aunt announced she had almonds and triaged her corner. A groomsman offered to fetch fast food and was mobbed with impossible orders. The DJ leaned hard into up-tempo tracks, the musical equivalent of CPR. At the head table, my mother collected sympathy. My father began workshopping a story about flaky vendors. The planner and venue manager whispered numbers. I watched the room try to fix something it didn't understand. This wasn't a logistics hiccup, it was a boundary. Somewhere a child cried. Somewhere else a woman laughed too loud, then covered her mouth. I was already doing math. Deposits, food cost, payroll for a night that would now end early, the penalty I'd happily eat to keep my people safe. The numbers marched in tidy columns while my chest did a wild metronome. Daria squeezed my shoulder once as if to anchor me to the floor. Around us the fairy lights kept pretending everything was fine. It was almost funny. The room looked perfect in photos and completely broken in person. Someone clinked a glass for silence and got the opposite. Outside, night air felt like metal and mercy. Daria stood beside me, hands on hips, watching the last rack lock. You sure? She asked in the way good seconds ask, not doubting, accounting. No, I said. Yes. Both true. The truth had a hinge. I was the pin. I texted my accountant, refund? Monday. And my therapist did it. Then I put the phone away and went back inside. If I was going to burn a bridge, I could at least watch the sparks fall. When you pull the plug on something big, whether it's a dinner service, a concert, Or in this case, a wedding. The silence that follows is its own creature. It settles over the crowd like dust after an explosion, coating everything, making people blink and cough as they realize something has changed and they can't go back. Inside that hall, I stood in my eucalyptus bridesmaid dress while my staff's vans rolled off into the night. The fairy lights glowed. The band played too cheerfully, and 300 guests began the slow churn of realizing they had been left with nothing but open bar and cold bread baskets. At first it was disbelief. People thought maybe it was a delay or a stunt or some kind of avant-garde food truck reveal. But minutes stretched. No trays came. No servers passed. The only thing moving was alcohol, and people on empty stomachs drink like dry sponges. My mother, sensing eyes on her, leaned into her strength, performance. She smiled wide, gestured to the DJ, and laughed as if she were in on some joke. Technical issue, she chirped, as though salmon fillets were light bulbs you could replace. My father clapped a cousin on the back and muttered something about vendors these days. Already, they were rewriting reality. They weren't being humiliated. They were weathering someone else's incompetence. Except too many people had heard me. Too many had seen me hand the mic back after my "we run on respect" line. The seed of the truth was planted. Guests whispered. A bridesmaid tugged my arm and asked in a hiss, "Wait, was that for real? Did you pull the catering?" I didn't answer. My silence was enough. Evan approached me, face pale under the fairy lights. He pulled me aside, away from the head table where Lena sat stiff as stone. "What did you do?" he asked, voice cracking. "I protected my staff," I said evenly. "I drew a line. By leaving 300 people without food." His eyes were wild. By embarrassing me? By humiliating Lena on her wedding day? I wanted to grab his shoulders and shake him, tell him I didn't want to humiliate him, that this wasn't about him, that it was about our parents grinding me into the dirt again and again, and me finally saying no. But the truth sat heavy. The collateral damage was his night, his joy, his wife's first hours as family. And yet, I didn't regret it. That's the worst part. Standing there, watching his face crumple, I didn't regret pulling my people out of the line of fire. I only regretted that he had to be standing in the fallout. Behind us, the noise grew. Aunts and uncles began strategizing like wartime generals. Domino's delivers, right? There's a McDonald's 10 minutes away. We could send someone to Costco. The groomsmen actually formed a convoy to raid the nearest fast food joints, armed with pooled cash and the desperation of people trying to plaster over a wound with napkins. It would have been funny if it weren't tragic. Meanwhile, Lena's family huddled together, whispering in their lilting Ukrainian accents. I couldn't catch every word, but I caught enough. Shame, scandal, sabotage. Her grandmother shook her head, lips pursed tight, like she had predicted all along that marrying into this family would bring disaster. My stomach clenched. Then came the guests' reactions aimed at me directly. A college friend of Evan's stomped over. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he spat. "Who does this? You couldn't suck it up for one night? You had to make it about you?" I opened my mouth, but Lena's maid of honor cut in. "She had her reasons," she said tightly. "You don't know the history." The friend snorted. "Yeah, well, 300 hungry people don't care about history. They care about not being starved like cattle." He stormed off. Others weren't so direct, but I could feel their eyes on me, their whispers grazing my skin like nettles. "That's the sister. That's the caterer. That's the one who ruined it." The villain of the story was already being written in real time, and I was its ink. I slipped outside to breathe, leaning against the cool wall of the venue. My phone buzzed, messages from Daria. "All trucks cleared. Staff safe. Refund paperwork drafted. Don't spiral. We've got you." Reading those steadied me. At least my people knew. At least they understood this wasn't about abandoning them. It was about defending them. But then the door swung open, and it was Lena. She looked, not furious exactly, not even tearful, just hollow, like someone had scooped the light out of her. "I tried to tell myself it was nerves," she said quietly, "that your parents were just awkward. But this?" She gestured back toward the chaos inside. "This is cruelty." Her words pierced more than shouting ever could. I swallowed hard. "Lena, you didn't punish them," she said, her voice shaking. "You punished me. You punished Evan. And you punished every single person who came here to celebrate us." She wrapped her arms around herself. "And worst of all, you punished yourself. Because now no one will see you as the victim anymore. They'll only see you as the one who ruined it. She left me standing in the dark with that sentence buzzing in my ears like a wasp I couldn't swat. When I returned inside, the room was unraveling. Pizza boxes had started to arrive, greasy and incongruous against white linen. Guests were devouring slices like wolves, their laughter tinged with hysteria. The DJ kept spinning party tracks, trying to force energy back into the space. But the magic was gone. The fairy lights looked cheap now, the flowers overblown, the whole thing like a parody of itself. And through it all, my parents sat at the head table, smiling like royalty in exile, accepting condolences from sympathetic guests. My mother even dabbed her eyes with a napkin at one point, as if she had been wounded by my tantrum. She was already rewriting the story, the ungrateful daughter, the hysterical sabotage, the victimized parents. The worst part? People believed her, because she told it first. I stayed long enough to see Evan and Lena do their first dance. It was brittle but beautiful, like glass about to shatter. Then I slipped out. I didn't hug them. I didn't say goodbye. I just left, eucalyptus dress scratchy against my skin, the night air swallowing me whole. The drive home was silent except for my own pulse. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to this world. Part of me was proud. Part of me was nauseous. All of me was irrevocably changed. Because here's the thing. Once you draw a line like that, you can't go back. The next day, my phone started buzzing. And buzzing. And buzzing. The fallout had only begun. The morning after felt like waking into a storm you'd set in motion, but couldn't stop. My phone was a live grenade on my nightstand. Dozens of missed calls. Notifications stacked like falling dominoes. My group chats, muted, buzzing anyway. Emails from info at our company inbox, already flooded. For a minute, I just stared at the screen, frozen between dread and grim inevitability. When you're the kind of person who builds contingency plans for other people's chaos, you don't prepare well for your own. The family group chat. First stop, the family WhatsApp. A digital circus. Mom, you embarrassed us in front of everyone. Do you feel proud of yourself? Dad, we can't even leave the house. People are calling. Do you realize what you've done to our reputation? Mom again, your poor brother. You ruined the happiest day of his life. Evan, finally, why didn't you just talk to me first? Every line was its own jab, but Evan's undid me. I wanted to scream. I did this because I've been talking for years, and nobody listened. But text boxes don't carry decades of dismissal. They make you sound like the bitter one. I typed, "We'll talk when things are calmer," and then muted the chat. The fallout online. By then, photos and shaky videos were already crawling across Instagram and TikTok. Hashtags forming like storm clouds. Hashtag wedding fail. Hashtag hungry guests. Hashtag catering disaster. In one clip, you can hear my mother's voice sing, "Some of us learn slower than others," right before the camera pans to trays being wheeled away. The comments were split between pity and outrage. Imagine paying $dollar and ending up with pizza at your wedding. Honestly iconic, but also yikes. The sister is a menace. Protect your staff, queen. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Strangers were already turning my breaking point into content. Memes. Hot takes. Half of them didn't even know the backstory, but it didn't matter. Narrative beats nuance every time. My staff's response. At least my people had my back. Daria sent a long message in our private Slack. Team. Opie made the call to pull us because she refuses to let us serve in disrespectful conditions. That's leadership. We still get paid, full night. We'll cover our costs and move on. Remember, catering is about dignity, not just logistics. Be proud. The reactions rolled in. Flexed biceps, wine glass, raising hands. One server DM'd me. First time in my career someone stood up for us instead of telling us to smile. Thank you. If nothing else, I had that. If I lost everything else, I'd still have the knowledge that for once, I didn't sacrifice my people to keep up appearances. Calls I couldn't ignore. Around noon, Evan called again. This time I picked up. His voice was shredded, like he hadn't slept. Do you have any idea what you've done to Lena? He asked. Her family thinks she married into a circus. They think you wanted to humiliate her. My throat tightened. That was never my intention. Then what was? His voice cracked. Because from where I was standing, it looked like you wanted to prove a point. And you did. Congratulations. Everyone knows you can pull the plug. But at what cost? There was a long silence. I wanted to tell him the truth, that I'd spent 30 years swallowing their poison, and I finally spit it out. That I couldn't stand on that stage, in that dress, being their punchline again, while feeding their guests like nothing was wrong. That it wasn't about him, or at least, not only about him. But all I said was, I couldn't let them do it to me again. Evan sighed, so deep it sounded like surrender. I can't fix this, he whispered. I can't fix you and them. But you've dragged me into it, and now Lena's paying too. You say you love me, but this didn't feel like love. That one gutted me, because he was right. Love doesn't always look like protection, it can look like betrayal. Parents' counter-narrative. By evening, my parents had already gone into damage control mode. They told relatives I'd had an emotional breakdown, that I panicked under pressure, that catering was too stressful for me, and I lashed out. They painted themselves as bewildered victims of their unstable daughter's meltdown. A cousin texted me, "Is it true you had a breakdown? Aunt says you're seeing a doctor about meds." That lie made me shake with fury. They weren't just spinning the story, they were erasing my agency. Again, I replied, no breakdown, no meds. I made a choice. Whether anyone believed me was another story. Unexpected support. Late that night, I got a call from Lena's younger brother. He surprised me by saying, "Look, my family's furious. But I saw your face when your mom made those comments. I get it. Not excusing, but I get it." That sliver of empathy cracked something open in me. Maybe not everyone would buy the villain script my parents were selling. Maybe, just maybe, some people understood that lines drawn in fury are still lines that needed drawing. The sinking realization. But as I lay in bed, scrolling through endless posts and comments, one thought kept clawing at me. Lena had been right. I hadn't punished my parents. I'd punished her, Evan, 300 guests, and myself. And yet, if I had the choice again, would I really do it differently? I didn't know. That's what scared me most. Because the storm wasn't over. It was only gathering strength. TLDR, part for the day after, my phone exploded with messages. Parents painted me as unstable. Evan felt betrayed. Lena's family saw me as cruel. Online, videos went viral. Staff supported me, but the rest of the world was split. I realized I'd not just punished my parents. I dragged everyone else into the blast. And yet, I wasn't sure I'd undo it if I could. The online chaos was bad, yes, but nothing compared to the private war brewing with my parents. They weren't content to let the story float in gossip. They wanted to control the narrative, weaponize it, and bury me under it. The first call. 2 days after the wedding, my mother finally called me directly. Her voice was syrup over steel. "Well," she said, "I hope you've enjoyed your little tantrum. The whole town is talking about you. You've humiliated this family in ways I can't even measure." I didn't answer right away. Silence unsettles her. Finally, I said, "You humiliated me first. At the rehearsal dinner. During the toasts. For 30 years before that." She laughed, that brittle sound I've hated since childhood. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We were teasing. Families tease." "Teasing," I said, "doesn't leave scars." Her tone sharpened. "What you did wasn't standing up for yourself. It was cruelty. Do you want that on your conscience? Because I certainly won't carry it for you." That's my mother in a nutshell. Wound you, then hand you the blame for bleeding. The fatherly lecture. Later that night, my father called. His method is quieter, more insidious. "I don't understand you," he began. "You're clever. You're capable. But you squander it. You think every slight is an attack. You overreact. You make enemies where there could be allies." I clenched my jaw. "You don't respect me. You never have. Yesterday was the first time I demanded it." "You demanded it," he said, "by sabotaging your own brother's wedding?" "I demanded it." I shot back, "by refusing to serve 300 people while being told I'm worthless." He sighed, heavy with practiced disappointment. "You'll look back on this someday and realize you destroyed relationships you can't rebuild. All because you couldn't let go of childish grudges." Childish. That word dug deep, like always. As though decades of dismissal could be brushed off as immaturity. The letter. On the third day, I received an email, a formal letter, practically, drafted in my father's precise, lawyerly tone. "We cannot condone the reckless and selfish behavior you displayed. Until you make amends, apologize publicly, and cover the financial damages inflicted, we cannot consider you part of this family in good standing. We are heartbroken, but actions have consequences. It read like a corporate memo firing me from my own bloodline. I didn't reply, because what was there to say? I wasn't going to apologize for defending myself. Not this time. The therapy tools. That night, I pulled out the notebook from therapy, the one full of grounding exercises and reminders. One line I'd underlined 3 times. You are allowed to protect yourself, even from your family. I repeated it like a mantra, but the child in me still craved their approval. Still wanted them to say, "We see you. We're proud." That craving is the leash they've always yanked. Cutting it felt like cutting skin. Conversations with myself. Every night since, I've replayed it all. Could I have endured one more evening of their jabs? Could I have smiled, gray-rocked, kept the peace for Evan's sake? Yes, probably. But at what cost to myself? That's the knife edge I live on now. Knowing I hurt people I love, but also knowing I couldn't keep letting my parents weaponize me as their family punchline. It's not victory. It's not defeat. It's survival. Evan's silence. The hardest part is Evan. He hasn't called since that first broken conversation. His silence is worse than his anger. It tells me he doesn't know which side to stand on. His wife's pain, his parents' shame, my fury. It's too much for him to balance. And maybe he resents me for forcing him to. I don't blame him, but I ache for him. He was always the one I tried to protect. And now I'm the one who hurt him most. The parents' new campaign. Word reached me through cousins. My parents are telling everyone I've always been unstable, that they tried to help me, but I've gone too far. They're rewriting history in real time, painting themselves as long-suffering saints. And part of me wants to fight back, point by point, with receipts, the years of belittling, the dismissals, the public jabs. But another part of me knows it wouldn't matter. People believe the loudest voice, not the truest one. The internal battle. So now the war is less about them and more about me. Do I let them continue defining me as broken, unstable, cruel? Or do I accept that no matter what I do, they'll never give me the validation I want and move on? That's the hardest fight. Not against their words, but against the part of me that still believes them. If the days after the wedding were a storm, then my brother's silence was the eye of it. Still, heavy, terrifying because of what it meant or didn't mean. The void between us. Evan and I used to text almost daily. Dumb memes, late night. Is this sandwich cursed or blessed? Photos, random check-ins. After the wedding, that thread went dead. I could see the little last scene that on his profile. I could see he was alive. But no messages came. The silence pressed against me like a weight. It wasn't just absence. It was a verdict left unspoken. Was he furious? Was he disappointed? Was he grieving the sister he thought he had? I didn't know. And the not knowing ate at me more than the angry calls from my parents ever could. Memories that haunt. Silence makes space for memory. I kept flashing back to when we were kids, him sneaking extra cookies to my room when Mom said I didn't deserve dessert for talking back, or letting me borrow his Walkman when I cried after a fight at school. Once, when I was 14 and ready to run away, it was Evan who found me at the bus station, sitting on my suitcase. He didn't lecture me. He just sat down and said, "If you go, I'm going too." That was enough to make me go home. So what did it mean that now he didn't speak at all? Lena's barrier. Part of me wonders if it's not just Evan's silence, but Lena's too. She's the gatekeeper now. His wife, his partner. I don't begrudge that. It's how marriage works. But I imagine their conversations late at night, her saying, "Your sister ruined our day. You have to choose which family you're loyal to now." And maybe he agrees with her. Maybe he resents that I forced him into a position where defending me would mean betraying her. It wouldn't surprise me, but it would break me. The messages I draft, but don't send. Every night, I draft long messages. Pages of them. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just couldn't survive another night of their cruelty. You've always been my safe person. I hope I didn't lose that forever. Tell me how to fix this, even if the answer is that I can't. And then I delete them. Because sending them feels selfish, like I'd be demanding comfort from the very person I wounded most. So instead I sit with the silence, like swallowing glass. Our parents' poison. The worst part is, I know our parents are exploiting this. I can practically hear my mother saying, "See, this is what she does. She drags everyone down with her." My father probably tells Evan, "You're the successful one. You have to distance yourself." They've always tried to pit us against each other, golden child and scapegoat. I used to think we'd beaten that game by loving each other anyway. But maybe I finally handed them the win. A small crack. On the 5th night, I got a text. One line, no punctuation. I don't know what to say. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't rage. It was just raw truth. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Then I typed back. That's okay. Just don't stop saying something. He didn't reply, but he hadn't disappeared completely. And that felt like air after drowning. The ache of waiting. I don't know what happens next. Maybe he'll cut me off completely. Maybe we'll rebuild, splintered but standing. Maybe this silence is just a bridge being built plank by plank, slowly, painfully. But right now, every day without his voice feels like losing him all over again. And I don't know how many times my heart can survive that. I think I always knew the story would end here. Not with reconciliation, not with forgiveness neatly tied up like a bow, but with something harder, something final. The last conversation with Evan. It came a week after the wedding. Evan finally called. His voice was flat, worn thin like a record played too many times. I've been thinking, he said. About us. About what happened. My heart lurched. Evan. No, let me finish, he said. I know Mom and Dad have always been who they are. I know they've hurt you. I know they've made you feel small. I don't blame you for snapping. I don't even blame you for protecting yourself. But you didn't just protect yourself. You scorched the earth. And you burned me and Lena in the process. I closed my eyes. I know. And I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't mean to. But intent doesn't erase impact. His voice cracked. I don't know how to look at you right now. Not without seeing that moment, that choice. And Lena, she doesn't want you near us. Not for a long time. The words sliced deep. So what are you saying? I'm saying I love you. You'll always be my sister. But I need distance. We both do. Maybe someday we'll find our way back. But right now, you can't be part of my life. It was the kind of sentence that leaves a person hollow. I wanted to argue, to beg, to rewind. But instead I said, very quietly, okay. And that was it. The parents' victory, sort of. After that, my parents doubled down on their version. They paraded it to anyone who would listen. The unstable daughter, the ruined wedding, their heartbreak. In their minds, they'd finally proven me wrong once and for all. But here's the thing. Their victory felt like ashes. Yes, they had Evan under their narrative for now. Yes, they had the sympathy of neighbors and cousins. But they also lost me entirely. And though they'll never admit it, I know that cut them too. Because what's the point of control if there's no one left to wield it on? My line in the sand. I didn't send apologies. I didn't crawl back. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to repair what I didn't break. Instead, I wrote myself a different kind of letter. One that said, you are not worthless. You are not unstable. You are not the villain in their story just because you refuse to play their fool. You may have lost family, but you didn't lose yourself. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The cost is high. I don't sugarcoat it. I miss my brother every day. I miss the easy texts, the dumb emojis, the way he always made space for me. And knowing that Lena sees me as a saboteur, that hurts too. There's grief in this choice, and it will linger. But there's also a strange kind of peace. Because for the first time, I'm not begging my parents for scraps of love that will never come. I'm not standing in a kitchen, serving with a smile while being torn down. I chose myself. And maybe that's what growing up really is. Realizing that sometimes the only way to win against toxic family is to walk away, even if it means walking alone.